In a small village by the sea, there lived a husband and wife who were deeply in love with each other. Though their lives were simple and their belongings few, they found contentment in the small joys of their daily routine. The husband worked as a fisherman, setting out early every morning to catch fish from the sea. He would sell his catch at the market, providing just enough to buy food and basic necessities for both him and his wife. Their life was one of modesty, but it was filled with warmth, laughter, and an unwavering sense of love. They didn't have riches or material wealth, but they shared a bond that made them feel rich in the ways that truly mattered. Despite the challenges they faced, their love for each other never wavered. The wife would wait for him every day to return from his fishing trips, always ready with a warm meal and a smile. In the evenings, they would sit together by the fire, talking about their hopes and dreams. The husband's heart was full of gratitude for his wife, who had stood by him through thick and thin. She was his companion, his confidant, and his greatest source of joy. He was proud of the life they had built together, even if it was a life of struggle. However, despite the love and happiness they shared, their peaceful life would soon be shaken by an unexpected tragedy. One day, the wife fell ill, and her health quickly began to deteriorate. The husband was devastated by her sudden sickness and did everything in his power to find a cure. He spent all the money he had saved, even sold his few possessions, to pay for treatments and consult the best doctor in the village. But no matter what the doctor tried, the wife's condition only worsened. The husband grew desperate as he watched his beloved wife suffer, but he refused to give up. Every day he hoped for a miracle, praying that somehow she would recover. His love for her was so strong that he couldn't imagine life without her. But despite his efforts, his worst fear came true. His wife passed away. The loss was unbearable, and the man was left alone with a heart broken by grief. He had lost the one person who had made his life complete. In his sorrow, he placed her body in a boat and sent it out to sea, believing it was the last gesture of love he could offer her. As the boat drifted away, he whispered his final goodbye, hoping that somehow she would find peace. The fisherman's grief after his wife's death consumed him completely. He felt as though the world had lost its color and warmth, and he was left with nothing but an overwhelming emptiness. His once joyful life, filled with shared laughter and love, had now become a solitary existence. For days, he sat by the sea staring out at the boat that carried his wife's body. His heart ached with every passing wave, as if the ocean itself was mourning alongside him. The pain of losing her was unbearable. He couldn't imagine a life without her by his side. She had been his everything, his love, his companion, and his reason for living. Desperate and heartbroken, the fisherman searched for any way to bring her back. He couldn't accept that she was gone forever. He had spent every last bit of his money on treatments and doctors, all to no avail. Now, with nothing left, he felt even more lost, like a man stranded in an endless storm without a lifeboat. The thought of her death haunted him, and he began to wonder if he had done enough to save her. Had he missed something? Could there have been a way to heal her if only he had tried harder? His mind raced with these questions, but no answers came. One evening, while he sat alone on the shore, his despair deepened. He wondered if he would ever find peace or a way to move on. As he sat there, his eyes swollen from crying, an unexpected figure appeared before him. An old man with a kind face and wise eyes approached him from the edge of the sea. The fisherman was too lost in his grief to notice the stranger at first. The old man walked up to him and asked gently, "Why you cry, my dear man? What has caused you such sorrow?" The fisherman, initially startled by the stranger's presence, quickly responded, his voice raw with emotion, "Leave me alone, go away." There is nothing anyone can do for me. My wife is dead, and nothing can bring her back." He looked at the sea, his face contorting with the pain of his loss. The old man, however, didn't leave. Instead, he sat beside the fisherman, his presence calming in the midst of the man's storm of grief. "I have traveled far," the old man said softly, "and I know of a cure that could save her, but there is a price to be paid. If you wish to try it, you must make a sacrifice." The fisherman, feeling desperate and willing to do anything, looked up at the old man. "I have nothing left," he replied, his voice shaky. "But if there is any chance, I will do whatever it takes." The old man's words seemed to bring a flicker of hope to the fisherman's heart, though he was still unsure of what the stranger meant by a sacrifice. He had already lost everything he held dear: his wife, his peace of mind, his sense of purpose. But as he looked into the old man's eyes, something in the way he spoke made the fisherman feel like this was his last chance. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a way to bring her back. The old man's voice softened as he explained further, "What I offer is not an ordinary cure. It requires a very specific act. But if you are willing, you will have the chance to see your wife again." The fisherman, still desperate and consumed by grief, listened intently, hanging on every word. "I can bring her back to life," the old man continued. "But first, you must go to the boat where her body lies. You will cut your finger and place 3 drops of your blood on her lips. Only then will the spell work, and she will return to you." The fisherman could hardly believe what he was hearing. Could this really be true? Could his wife, whom he had just buried in the sea, truly come back to him? His mind raced, but his heart longed for the chance to hold her once again, to hear her voice, to feel her presence. There was nothing he wouldn't do to bring her back. Without a second thought, he agreed. "Tell me, what must I do after I bring her back?" the fisherman asked, a mixture of hope and fear rising within him. The old man looked into the fisherman's eyes and spoke solemnly, "Your wife will owe a debt. If you ever leave her, or if she leaves you, she will need to give 3 drops of blood to repay the debt. Only then will the balance be restored." The fisherman nodded, accepting the terms without hesitation. He had nothing left to lose, and the thought of having his wife back in his arms was enough to make him willing to do anything. The old man gave him a final piece of advice before disappearing into the evening mist. "Go now, and remember that love is a powerful force. But it must be respected, or it will come at a cost." With newfound determination, the fisherman turned towards the boat that carried his beloved wife. He swam through the water, his heart pounding in his chest, knowing that what he was about to do could change everything. The blood, the sacrifice, it was all part of the plan, and he was willing to take the chance for one last chance at love. The fisherman, filled with a mix of dread and hope, swam through the cold waters to the boat where his wife's lifeless body lay. The sea seemed to stretch endlessly before him, and with each stroke of his arms, his heart raced faster. He thought about all the memories they had shared, their laughter, their quiet moments together, the dreams of a future that had now been shattered. But now, he had a chance to bring it all back, to revive the love they had lost. The old man's instructions echoed in his mind. 3 drops of his own blood on her lips would bring her back. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the fisherman reached the boat. He climbed aboard and gazed down at his wife, lying so still, her face pale and serene. His heart swelled with sorrow and love as he looked at her. He could hardly believe that just days ago she had been full of life, laughing and smiling by his side. Now she was gone, and all he had left was this single desperate act to save her. With trembling hands, the fisherman took a stone from the boat. He knew he had to act quickly before his courage faltered. Holding the stone in his hand, he looked at his wife one last time, his love for her overwhelming his fear. He pressed the stone against his finger, and sliced it open, feeling the sharp sting as blood began to well up. Without hesitation, he placed 3 drops of his own blood on her lips, praying that it would work. For a long moment, nothing happened. The fisherman's heart sank as he feared that all his hopes were in vain. But then, something miraculous occurred. Her fingers twitched. A soft breath escaped her lips. The fisherman's eyes widened in disbelief as he watched her eyelids flutter open. Slowly, she lifted her head, and a smile spread across her face. "My love," she whispered, her voice weak but full of warmth. The fisherman could hardly contain his joy as he held her in his arms, kissing her gently, overwhelmed by the sheer relief and happiness of seeing her alive once more. They embraced for what felt like an eternity, savoring the reunion they had both longed for. The fisherman's heart soared as he realized that she was truly back, and that their love, no matter how difficult their lives had been, could overcome even death. But as they held each other, the fisherman looked around for the old man who had helped him. He turned back to the boat, but the mysterious figure was nowhere to be found. In that moment, he knew that his life would never be the same again, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this second chance had come with a price. The fisherman and his wife returned home, their hearts full of gratitude and joy for the second chance they had been given. Their lives, though still poor and difficult, felt brighter now that they were together again. The days no longer felt as heavy, and even the simplest moments like sharing a meal or sitting by the fire became treasures they cherished more than ever. The fisherman was overjoyed, feeling as though his world had been made whole once again. The weight of the grief that had consumed him for so long had lifted, replaced by the warmth of his wife's presence. But as the months passed, something strange began to happen. His wife, once frail and pale, had started to change. She became more vibrant, her beauty growing day by day. At first, the fisherman thought it was just his imagination, that he was simply seeing the woman he loved with new eyes. But as time went on, he couldn't deny that she had grown more radiant, more captivating. The way the other fishermen in the village looked at her was a clear sign that something had changed. They would often stop to admire her beauty, and some even spoke of her as though she were something otherworldly. The fisherman tried not to pay too much attention, but he couldn't ignore the fact that his wife was now attracting attention from men far wealthier than he. It wasn't long before one fisherman in particular, a rich man from the village, became interested in her. He would come by their home, bringing gifts and offering promises of a better life. "You are such a beautiful woman," he would say. "Why do you live in this poor, hard life with him? I am rich. I could give you everything you want. You deserve more than this." The fisherman noticed the change in his wife's demeanor as she listened to the rich man's words. She seemed torn, her eyes drifting toward the possibility of a life without struggle, of living in luxury instead of poverty. The rich fisherman's offers only made her more distant. The fisherman could sense that something wasn't quite right. He hadn't imagined this before, but now he feared the old man's words, that if his wife ever left him, she would have to repay the debt with 3 drops of blood. One day, when the fisherman went away for a brief trip, the rich fisherman visited their home again. This time, he made his proposal even more enticing, urging her to leave her husband and marry him. At first, she hesitated, but soon the promise of a better life became too tempting. She agreed, but only under one condition, that she would first have to repay the debt. "I must give my husband 3 drops of blood," she explained. Her words left the fisherman with an uneasy feeling, but there was nothing he could do. He had already felt the consequences of the old man's mysterious promise, and now it seemed that his wife was ready to fulfill it. The fisherman's heart sank as the days passed, and he began to notice a growing distance between him and his wife. She had become more quiet, less present, and her once vibrant smile was now often replaced with a distant, almost thoughtful look. He couldn't understand what had happened. Everything had seemed perfect when they were reunited. How could things have changed so quickly? He spent long nights lying awake, trying to figure out what was wrong. She had once been his world, and now it felt as though a barrier was slowly building between them. One evening, as they walked together along the beach, a strange unease settled over the fisherman. The cool sea breeze swept through the air, but it didn't bring the comfort it once had. They were silent as they walked, the waves crashing softly against the shore. It was then that the fisherman noticed something unusual. His wife stumbled slightly, her foot catching on a rock. As she regained her balance, a small ring slipped from her pocket and fell to the ground. She quickly reached down, picked it up, and hid it in her hand, trying to conceal it from him. He felt a strange knot tighten in his stomach. They had never had money to buy rings, so where had this one come from? His mind raced with questions. Was there something she hadn't told him? Who had given her the ring? He asked her softly, his voice trembling with the uncertainty that had taken root in his heart. Where did you get this ring? She paused, her face tense for a moment before she answered. Someone gave it to me. The fisherman was confused, his curiosity turning to suspicion. Who gave it to you? He asked again, but she hesitated, then looked away. I wanted to wait to tell you. A feeling of dread washed over him as he realized that something had changed in her. The woman he loved had become a stranger, and he feared the worst. What is going on? He asked, his voice cracking with emotion. She stood there for a moment, her gaze shifting between the ring and the sea, as if struggling with a decision. Then, she spoke softly, her words like a knife to his heart. I loved you, but now I do not, she said, her voice steady but cold. I am sorry, but we are so poor. I've lived a hard life, and then I died. Now I live again, but things are harder than before. I want a better life. The fisherman's chest tightened with pain and confusion. The love they had shared, the life they had fought for, was slipping away. Before he could say anything, she reached down, picked up a stone, and sliced her finger with it. 3 drops of blood fell from her finger, and she lifted it to his mouth. Take it, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. I must repay the debt. The fisherman recoiled, not wanting to accept the cold reality of what was happening. A strong wind blew, and in that instant, the 3 drops of blood were swept away into the air, scattering toward the sea. He looked at her in disbelief, but when he turned back to her, she had vanished. The only thing left was a small, dark figure flying across the sky, something buzzing in the air. It was then that the fisherman realized what had happened. His wife was gone forever, and in her place, the curse had taken root, for the first time introducing the world to the mosquito. The fisherman stood alone on the beach, staring out at the empty spot where his wife had been just moments ago. The wind howled around him, carrying the sound of the waves crashing against the shore. But the only thing he could hear now was the quiet buzz of something small and incessant in the air. His heart pounded in his chest as he searched the sky, feeling a deep, gnawing emptiness that had suddenly replaced the warmth of his wife's presence. She was gone, just like that, vanished into the air, as if she had never been there at all. For a moment, he couldn't understand what had happened. The shock of her words, how she had spoken of leaving him, how she had offered to pay the debt with 3 drops of blood still echoed in his mind. The promise she had made, the curse that had been set in motion, had come to its tragic end. He thought of the old man's warning, that love, no matter how deep, must be respected or it would come with a cost. But he never imagined that it would come to this. His wife was gone, and the bond they had shared was now lost forever. He looked around, calling her name, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "Where are you?" he cried, hoping for some sign that she might reappear. But there was no response. No soft laugh, no comforting touch. Only the sound of the wind and the distant waves. His heart sank as he realized the truth. His wife was gone, and with her, the love they had shared. She had become nothing more than a memory, fading away with the wind. As he stood there, lost and broken, something caught his eye. A small, dark shape flew across the sky, moving swiftly and erratically. It hovered just above the water, its wings beating with a steady rhythm. The fisherman squinted, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Then it hit him. The dark shape was a mosquito. A mosquito that buzzed in the air, its small body darting through the wind as if it were searching for something. The villagers had often spoken of mosquitoes, how they carried disease and pain, and how their persistent buzzing could drive a person mad. But now, in this moment of realization, the fisherman understood that this mosquito was more than just a pest. It was a symbol, a reminder of the curse that had been cast upon him and his wife. The debt had been paid, but at what cost? His wife had disappeared, and in her place, the mosquito would haunt him, a constant reminder of the love that was lost and the price that had been paid. Weeks passed, and the villagers began to notice the strange mosquito that seemed to appear everywhere. It made a horrible buzzing sound, and it seemed to bite anyone it could find, draining their blood just as the old man had said. As the mosquito's presence spread, so did the story of the fisherman and his wife. The villagers spoke of their tragic tale and how the curse of 3 drops of blood had led to the disappearance of the woman and the arrival of the mosquito. The fisherman, now living alone in sorrow, never saw his wife again. The mosquito never visited his home, for it had already claimed the life of the woman he loved. And so, he lived on, heartbroken and alone, haunted by the price he had paid for love. The fisherman's life, once filled with love and hope, had been torn apart by the events that unfolded. Alone and heartbroken, he continued to live by the sea, haunted by the memories of his wife, and burdened by the price of the curse. The mosquito, a constant reminder of the debt paid in blood, became an unwelcome symbol of the love he had lost and the sacrifice that had been made. The villagers, too, could not forget the story of the fisherman, the beautiful woman, and the mosquito that haunted their lives. It spread like wildfire, a cautionary tale, passed from one generation to the next. As the days turned into weeks and then into months, the fisherman's grief deepened and his loneliness grew. He never remarried, nor did he ever find the happiness he once had. The curse had stolen everything from him, his wife, his peace, and the life he had cherished. The mosquito, now an infamous creature, buzzed around the village, feeding on the blood of those it encountered. Its presence was a constant reminder that love, when taken for granted or treated recklessly, can lead to deep consequences. In the end, the fisherman's story became a legend, a story that villagers told their children, not just as a tale of heartbreak, but as a reminder of the delicate balance that love requires. It served as a lesson that, even in the deepest of love, there are responsibilities and sacrifices that come with it. Love is not something to be taken lightly, nor is it something that can be easily reclaimed once it is lost. The fisherman had been warned that his love for his wife could be tested, and in the end, the price of their love had proven too high. The story, though tragic, is still relevant today. It teaches us the importance of respect, trust, and understanding in relationships. Just as the fisherman and his wife were bound by love, we too are bound by the choices we make in our relationships with others. If we are careless or neglectful, the consequences can be devastating. Love requires effort, commitment, and sacrifice, not just in times of happiness, but in times of struggle as well. The lesson of the fisherman and his wife is a timeless reminder that love, while beautiful, is not without its trials, and that we must always honor and protect it, or risk losing it forever. And so, the fisherman's tale lives on, a somber reminder of the costs of love and the enduring power of sacrifice. It is a story that calls us to reflect on our own relationships, to cherish what we have, and to recognize the true value of the love we hold dear. For, in the end, love is the one thing that can heal or hurt, and its price is one that we must be willing to pay.